Good evening, gospel revolutionaries around the whole world. This is Michael Lilborn Williams coming to you live from the bonus room right here in Clarksville, Tennessee. We have nothing to tell you except the gospel. To say that we are excited here at the Gospel Revolution would be such an understatement. We just published on Sunday, chapter 1 of 1 Corinthians, translated without pseudographicals, and also had to remove the tentacles of the pseudographicals out of chapter 1. We'll do the same with chapter 2 and 3, and then you're going to get a wonderful big surprise as to the pseudographicals and what they are and where chapter 3 actually picks up. Without going into detail about that, I want to go ahead and teach you for the first time in the history of the planet of the world, the translated version, the religion-free translation of 1 Corinthians, published by the Gospel Revolution. It is absolutely wonderful. This is a word for word and thought for thought translation of these, and it's a wonderful thing to do. It's an easy thing to do. It is also an exegesis. An exegesis means that we have simply extracted what Paul has stated his thoughts are. No one has a right to insert their thoughts into anyone else's writings or teachings if they are indeed trying to communicate what the writer or author of another material has done. It is not kosher. It's not even legal to insert your own thoughts and distort what somebody else has said. So we've gone to great lengths and used great diligence, and we will explain to you exactly the process that we've done this in. But on with the teaching. We're going to be reading to you from the religion-free New Testament, from verse 17 through 25, here at the headquarters of the gospel. Well, we've got headquarters all over the world. It's amazing. Starting in verse 17, what will show up as verse 17 in any other Bible, we published this without verses indicated because we wanted to make sure that for the first time people got to read this with an uninterrupted flow. Our brain is a tricky thing, and if we tell it that this verse starts here and that one starts there, there can be a disconnect as to being able to read the fluidity that there is in Paul's writing. And fluidity is one of Paul's best, absolutely best kept secrets. And for those who have done with any translation of the Bible, which is to be verse damned. We coined that phrase some 30 years ago. And that is that you take one verse and try to live by it or stand by it or believe something on it. But that would be like taking one line out of the Constitution and saying you understood the Constitution, or out of a Celine Dion song. It doesn't make any difference what it is. You are damning yourself, if you will allow me to use that term, to confined and unrealized understanding of what the author of the writer or the song or the Constitution is actually trying to say. So here we go, verse 17. Since Christ did not send me to baptize, but to declare the good news of union between God and man, if wise words could bring this union, wise words would make the cross of no effect. This first statement by Paul is devastating to all doctrine that say if you believe this, then you're going to heaven. Let me use their terminology because we may not break through to their mindsets if we don't use their terminology. They say you go to heaven, whatever getting saved is to people, being redeemed. Paul has made it very clear here in this very first statement. He said, now I didn't come here to baptize because, many people, there are whole denominations. The Church of Christ teaches just exactly what Paul taught against, being concerned that baptism would be people's understanding of this is how you receive the redemption that God has brought through Christ, is that you may think it comes through baptism. Paul said, I'm just so glad that Jesus didn't send me, God didn't send me to baptize. And he said, because he sent me to declare the good news that union with God comes at the cross. Because if wise words could bring this union, that very teaching would make the cross of no effect. Wow. Stop the presses, stop religion, stop Christianity. You are making the cross of no effect. What makes the cross of no effect? When you say believing a certain thing causes a person to then be at union or one or at peace with God because they've embraced a certain very wise and very intricate message added with all kinds of you got to do this and don't do that, and baptized and not baptized, sprinkled or dunked or whatever. When you add those words, you make the cross. You make the cross of no effect. Your words make the cross completely ineffective for people to understand. Paul made it very clear. If any words, he was talking about his own. Do you realize that Paul was talking about his own words? That even if my words are what makes you one with God, then my own words have made the cross of no effect. I'm already excited. I ain't going to apologize. This is exciting. For the message of the cross is indeed destroying foolishness. This comes out quite different when you look directly at the Greek. But the power of God was saving everyone at the cross. Now, while the message of the cross, the teaching of the gospel, that everything was done at the cross, while that is destroying all the other foolish teachings, at the very same time, the power of God had already saved everyone at the cross. For Isaiah saith, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. I will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. Now that God hath brought complete redemption and union of God and man through the work of the cross, where is the wise? Where's the wise now? Who's going to make happen what has already happened? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Hath not God made foolish the wisdom of the cosmos? Therefore, by the prophetic wisdom, why did we translate this the prophetic wisdom? Because he just quoted one of the prophets. Therefore, by the prophetic wisdom of God, the cosmos by its own wisdom did not know God, but rather it pleased God to persuade them through salvation by proclamation. This was Paul's message. You see, when you understand that it was the work of the cross, I'm defying all of the teachings of mere Bible. I'm defying all of the teachings of all of the Bible schools out there that are saying that the cross didn't do anything, that the blood of Christ was just been anybody's blood. Your words are making the cross of no effect. But it's so delightful to be able to tell you, you can blabber on with all the foolishness in the world. It is not going to take away the fact that God redeemed the whole world through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And then Paul said that all we're doing is a salvation for the mind through proclamation. We're proclaiming. When you do a proclamation, it's about something that has been done, not what can happen. For the Jews require a sign. They weren't interested in a death, burial, and resurrection. They wanted signs. And the Greeks seek after wisdom to lead to union with God and man. So what Paul has said here is that the Jews want all kinds of signs instead of something. Give us something other than a death and then burial. Goodness gracious, that's base. That's just everybody goes through a death and a burial. Everybody that's ever come has gone through a death and a burial. That's the base things. You're going to see that this is the powerful thing that God chose to redeem the whole world. He says, therefore, by the prophetic wisdom of God, the cosmos by its own wisdom did not know God. Rather, it pleased God to persuade them about the cross through salvation by proclamation. For the Jews require a sign instead of a death, burial, and resurrection, and the Greeks seek wisdom to lead to union with God. But we have proclaimed that union between God and man took place at the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. That alone is a stumbling block to the Jews. It's a stumbling block to everybody I know right now. Whether it's Christian or mystic, because they all think it's their message. They think it's their message that saves people. Their message, my message, doesn't bring redemption to anybody. And only the message that Jesus Christ redeemed everybody through his death, burial, and resurrection brings salvation to the soul. You're just getting spiritual fluff. I had a dog named Fluff. A union between God and man. And it's foolishness. The union of God and man simply and totally through the cross to the Greeks is absolute foolishness. That's just foolish to think that redemption came through something so base and so common as death happens to everybody. Burial happens to everybody. Let me tell you what doesn't happen to everybody, especially with everybody inside of them, and that is a resurrection. But everyone who was appointed to this redemption, which was the entire world, including both Jews and Gentiles, Christ's death, burial, and resurrection is the power of God. Now, Paul called two things the power of God, but for two different reasons. The death, burial, and resurrection of Christ was the power of God to redeem the world. The proclamation of that will save the world. It will save the soul. It will save the mind and the emotions. The power of God, this resurrection, death, burial, and resurrection is the power of God. And that act alone is the wisdom of God, because the foolish act of God at the cross is wiser than all the words of men. And the weakness of God demonstrated on the cross is stronger than all of mankind. Don't you see this foolishness and this weakness? Didn't you see the weakness of Christ that as he was on the cross, and this horrible crucifixion, which was worse than anybody else's, but by definition, it was worse than them. They didn't nail the hands and the feet to the cross. They tied them there. Jesus is the only one that went through this type of crucifixion. So, but it's not the degree that he suffered. It's who he was when he suffered. Then why did they put nails in his hands and feet? Because it was prophesied. All of these minor, minute details, detail upon detail, was prophesied by the prophets. Those that our friends aforementioned mock. They mock them. They mock Moses. They mock the prophets. And, to your own conclusions, that makes the cross of no effect. But that seems to be their delight. They delight in making the cross of no effect. They want their wise words to be what saves you. Their wise words nor mine will redeem someone. You can't redeem somebody through your wise words when the cross beats you to it. He says very clearly here, it's the power of God, and that act alone is the wisdom of God. That act alone, death, burial, and resurrection, that act alone is the wisdom of God. Because the foolish act of God at the cross is wiser than all the words that man could speak. And the weakness of Jesus hanging there on the cross, demonstrated on the cross, is stronger than the entire human race. God chose the base of the world. Now, that translation says things, and things is nowhere in there. What did God choose when he chose the base, weak, despised, and rejected? That's talking about Jesus. It's not talking about you. Oh, I'm base. Oh, I'm so despised. Oh, I'm so rejected. No, 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 no. Take you out of the picture and you will see the power of the gospel. This is the very first teaching that we have done out of the Gospel Revolution produced religion-free Bible. We hope you enjoyed it. And we also are really looking forward to chapter 2 and chapter 3 coming to you soon. Hang in there. Isn't this powerful?